Welcome back to Oh Yes You Can. This is the third in our series. This is the watercolor experience. And this session is number 2 actually of this series. Today we're going to continue with our sketching instruction and learn a little bit more about using watercolor paints. Okay, let's get started by having the correct supplies in the right places for us. We'll need our watercolor paints, of course. Remember, I showed you these affordable kinds that are available at most hobby and school supply stores. So you'll need your watercolor paints. I had suggested to you that if you already had watercolor brushes, terrific, use them. If you don't, this is an alternative that will work very, very well for us, and it's in fact what I'm going to be using today. And from that packet that will only set you back around $5 or so, hopefully. That's what this one cost at any rate, local Walmart. I'm going to be pulling out the 2 brushes, maybe. This is the wider one that the kit contains, and this is one of the narrower ones. They each have the characteristic of being what we call brights. The edges are like sharp edges, like we can draw a fine line with them. So a larger one, a smaller one, something that approximates what I'm showing you right now. Have those available. You'll need watercolor paper, and I highly suggest, let me show you the blank side, the 140-pound weight. What is Linda talking about? When you're shopping for watercolor paper rather, that isn't quite enough information right there where it says watercolor. Let's look down here at the descriptors on these lines below and find where it says the weight of the paper. What I want you to find is 140-pound weight, 140. This is a little bit more expensive than the lesser weight. I think it's 90 pound or something like that. This one will work better for our purposes because it has more body. It's thicker. Can you kind of hear that sound? It's a much thicker, more absorbent paper and will work much more happily for us than the other ones. If you have the other ones, don't worry about it. Use those, like the 60-pound weight. But I would suggest for happier results, you equip yourself with an easel of some sort. This is just a piece of cardboard from a cardboard box. Cut it out larger than your painting surface, and then tape your watercolor paper to the surface using a waterproof tape. This is painter's tape. Tape the 4 edges of your paper down nice and flat and smooth on the easel, and it will keep it from curling up and being less pleasant a result. So those are some alternatives. Meanwhile, let's get ourselves organized here. Oh yeah, you need today a pencil and an eraser for our sketching. That being so that if you want to make corrections in your initial sketch, you can. We're going to be sketching with light lines, as we always do. That gives us the alternative to erase and make corrections easily. If we make our lines too black and dark with the pencil, it's awfully hard to erase and get those out of our finished product. And since these are only guidelines we're doing, we don't want them to show forever. Pencil eraser in hand, watercolor paper in hand, 140-pound press, and those that I just showed you in the tablet usually are in 9 by 12 sizes. For today's project, we only need a half sheet. So cut one of those sheets in half and it'll be the 6x9 that I'm showing you right now. This is our watercolor paper. Are you nervous about drawing a subject? You say, I can't draw. I say, oh yes you can. Let me show you how. Our topic today is the ordinary apple. Think about the shape of an apple. Pretty much round, yeah? Are you comfortable drawing a round circle on your paper? If not, do what I'm going to do. Find a jar lid. This looks like it might have come from, I don't know, a mayo jar maybe? Whatever size you like for your apple, position it in the landscape position on your paper. Position it roughly in the middle. And with your pencil, just draw around that. I'm going to do it right now. And while you're doing it with your pencil and making nice light lines so that you can see, I'm going to be using a marker. Not a perfect circle, and of course with my marker I cannot erase and change those, so you make sure that you make your lines light and erasable if need be, yeah? Okay, now let's think some more about, notice I didn't finish the bottom of my apple on purpose. Here's why. Here's some cool apples from my holiday collection. Notice the shape of the apple? Well, first of all, they aren't perfectly round. They're a little bit more oval shaped, aren't they? Doesn't have to happen that way. Apples can be round. So if yours is round and you like it that way, leave it. If you want to make it a little bit more oval, all you have to do is bring those, that doesn't look very neat and nice, but bring those side edges in a little closer to the center. Just make them less rounded, a little bit straighter down. And while you have your pencil in your hand, let's also do this. Did you notice down here, I don't know, I call these dimples, but these cute little wavy lines here down on the area where the apple blossom once was. You can see them also here on this one. See these little, come over here, these wavy lines down here at the bottom? That's why I left the bottom of my circle undone. So right now I'm going to go sway, sway, sway on the bottom and make those little wavy guidelines for myself. And one more thing while the pencil's in hand, back to the drawing board here. Notice on certain areas in the apple that it is highlighted. See those shiny spots? We want some of that in our finished painting. And how do we do that? With watercolor, we leave those shiny areas unpainted. No paint at all, just the paper creates the glow. For that, let's do this. Back to your sketch, pencil in hand, lightly. Let's make first of all that little dip where the stem was attached to our apple. Let's make that little dip first of all. See, it's just a little curvy line. Doesn't go all the way. Pencil still in hand. One more thing. Let's add to that curvy line a kidney shape. And that's the area that we're going to be leaving unpainted to be the shine on our apple. Okay, I think we are ready to begin painting. Almost anyhow. Let's put away the pencil and the eraser and the jar lid if you had one of those tools with you. And let's line up the rest of the things that we need. I'm going to put my apples out of the way. half sheet of watercolor paper, 140 pound, in the landscape position, not the portrait, landscape position today. Put that in front of you. And we need your watercolors. They need to be opened. Come on, open, open. We're not going to be using all the colors in our tray, just the selected ones we need for our apple picture. And to make those paints usable, because they are in solid form right now, we need to moisten them. So, I need to stop and put all my ducks in a row over here. This is my art hand. I'm right-handed. So all my tools, like the water tub and the paint tray and the brushes and the folded paper towel, all those things need to be on my painting side so that I don't drip paint across my finished product. If you're a left-handed painter, well, of course, you're just going to put your tools on your side. So I have my water tub, my two little paint brushes that we talked about. We're going to be starting with the larger one of those. And we have our paint tray open. And we have, hopefully, our paper towel all folded and ready and cushiony, ready to go. And the first thing we need to do, as I started to say, was moisten these paints and get them ready to use. Now we're going to be using the yellow, so I'm going into my paint tub, my water tub rather, and getting painted, and I can't talk right. Get water in my brush, get it nice and moist, and go to the yellow and drip, drip, drip water into the yellow section of my paint box. If I accidentally touch the paint as I'm doing that, I'm going to have paint in my brush. Before I can touch another color, I need to clean that out. So go to the water tub, swish, 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 dab, dab, dab your brush on your paper towel, get it nice and dry, clean, no yellow coming out. More water in the brush, go back, and this time do the same thing to the orange. Make the orange nice and moist for us. Drip, 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 drip. Again, if you touch the orange on that during that process, then clean your brush. Tap, 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 clean brush. No orange in it now. More water. Drip, drip, drip into the red. So we've done yellow, orange, and now we're doing red. Same process. Dirty brush, clean it in the tub. Tap, tap, tap. Go back and pick up clean water and go to the green. Drip, 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 drip into the green. If you touch, clean the brush. One more color to pick up. Clean brush, clean water, brown. Drip, 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 drip. If you touch, clean your brush. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, so we have yellow, orange, red, green, and brown moistened. We're not going to need the other colors, so we won't even bother to wet those. How do we begin? Well, we're going to begin with a technique called wet on wet. And what that means is we're going to use our larger brush, clean water, no paint, no paint, no paint, clean water, and paint the entire apple with water except for that kidney shape that we showed up at the top. You can't see it on mine because I redid mine in a pencil, so it'll make a nice finished product. So now suddenly you can't see what I'm talking about as far as not painting it with water. You're going to paint the entire apple with water, everything all the way around, except that, whoops, kidney shape right there. Leave that one dry. We don't want any paint to get on that one. Of course, watercolor goes wherever there's water. So, right now, paint your apple with water. Be careful about the edges. Let's don't go outside. We really need to paint inside the lines. And we are not going to paint that kidney shape, of course. That stays dry. Down here I'm painting around the little dimples at the bottom now, and I'm making sure that I've got everything wet except the kidney shape. And if I'm careful, I can lift my paint, my watercolor paint, watercolor paper up and kind of, I don't want to tilt it and have the water run out of the lines. So I'm going to hold it just kind of at an angle like this and look to see if everything is wet except the kidney. And you know what? It's not. I missed a spot there, and I missed a spot there that didn't get any water. Now I've got it. One of the biggest, most wonderful secrets about watercolor is controlling the amount of moisture in your brush. Whether it's the water amount or the paint amount, that really gives you control of the whole process of watercolor painting. So, while I was talking, I was really stalling so that some of this water that I just let drip outside the line, shame on me, some of this plain old water that we just painted on needs to soak in. If we tried to paint on it now, we would just be painting puddles and it would not be at all pleasing. So it needs to dry up enough until that shine is gone. And I must have put a lot of water in mine because it's taking a while to soak in. But it's getting less shiny. You probably can't see in the camera, but they're still shiny. That's going to give me troubles. Not troubles, it's just one of the techniques that we have to keep in mind when we're doing watercolor. We have to be aware of how wet our paper is so that we can control where the paint's going to go. We're going to begin. I could have had you doing this with a hair dryer, and it probably would have been faster just to use your hair dryer. But a couple things happen with hair dryers. If you have big puddles, like I still have a puddle on mine, it might blow the water where I don't want it to go. So that can be self-defeating right there. So I didn't use the hair dryer right now. I'm just waiting more or less patiently for this to dry up a bit. We're going to begin with the yellow color, and we're going to have a clean brush. It was already clean from before, but it's nice and damp. It's not drippy, it's just damp. So let's go in because we want a strong yellow color to begin. And because I can hold this one up a little bit better, I can show you. We are going to paint from the top or bottom, doesn't matter. Top down the sides to the bottom. Long strokes, without getting any more paint or anything else in our brush. We go back, start at the top again, come down and lay a line right next to where we did before. And a third time, go up. It's awfully hard for me to figure out which side I need to go to. Back up to the top again. Remember, we're not putting any paint where that kidney is. We paint around it. So I'm going to pick up under it here and come down again. Now, you haven't picked up any more paint in your brush yet, I hope. And if you'll notice, what you've painted is kind of, well, it's hopefully is darker here. You're getting less paint each time you come down across there. So what we are achieving is this lighter area in the apple where the light is more directly shining on it. Okay, hopefully our paper is still a little bit moist. Go back and pick up more strong paint. I didn't say water. More yellow paint. And let's repeat the process on the opposite side of the apple, wherever it is, over here. Start at the top, come down long strokes, back up to the top, repeat down. I'm going to do it for real in a minute, and you can see what I'm actually talking about, because maybe I can do it on my countertop instead of getting lost. Okay? Just a damp brush, yellow paint, strong yellow paint in my brush. Starting at the top of my apple, using the broad part of my brush, I'm going to paint down the apple inside the lines and come down again next to that. Long strokes, come down again. I need to miss the kidney shape on down. So far, so good. Yeah, that looks dry enough. I can hold it up. My yellow is just not the prettiest yellow in the world. It's kind of hard to see. And when that happens, sometimes you may need to let your painting dry and then go back and put another layer of color over it until you get the intensity that you want. I'm starting on the other side of my apple, coming down inside the lines with my strong yellow color. And now I'm ready to go back up to the top, and I'll have slightly less paint in my brush this time, so it'll get a little bit lighter. And finally, what I'm doing is I have enough paint on my apple now that I can just kind of go back and forth between those. And because our apple is still a little bit damp from the water bath we gave it, we should be getting a nice, smooth apple skin appearance to our apple. I'm sorry my yellow is not bright enough. I'll bring out the colors a little bit more. I'm a person with this particular paint box that would need to go 2, maybe 3 layers of yellow to get the intensity that I want. I like yellow apples. I wanted my apple to be very, very yellow in appearance, and it's not happening. Okay. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I need to clean the yellow out of my brush, because I'm going to change colors now and begin to bring in a little bit of shading. Now I'm going to go to the green. And my green is kind of a weird green. It's almost a turquoise. I'll show you on my mixing tray over here. See, that's almost a turquoise. I'm not sure if I'll like that color. I'm going to try it. I had a damp brush. I dipped into the green paint. I put it out here to test the color. Now I'm going to try it just lightly. I'm trying to find out if it's the kind of green I want. So I'm going to my apple painting, and I'm going to go down here near the bottom, because if it's too dark I can blend it in easier from the bottom, which of course is the furthest point from the light source. So I'm going to try that green, and it's pretty dark. It's pretty dark. So I think I'm going to take a little bit out of my brush, add a little, remember I think I said this earlier, more water makes a lighter tone, more paint, less water makes a darker tone. So I weakened my paint with water, and I'm going to go back and start where I was before and just kind of ease those greens up into the yellow a little. I may go off the line, outside the lines if I'm not careful. Ooh, I got so much water on it, I'll have to be careful raising it up. That's beginning to work for me, but I've still got that dark green down there that I'm right over there. I'm going to work on that in just a minute, and the way I'm going to do that is because I have a green puddle, which means too much water. I'm going back to my water tub, cleaning my brush thoroughly, and taking the water out so that it's just barely damp. And now it can be used like a sponge to pick up that dark edge of green that I don't want along the edge. More like so. Looks like I'm going to get a drip if I'm not careful. I'm probably using a little bit too much water. That's why I'm getting drips. Shame on me. All right, I'm going to go back to that green. Let me show you again. I pulled the green up onto the tray and then added some water to it to dilute it so that it wasn't such a bright green. And that's where I think I got in trouble, because I didn't tap that excess water out of my brush. So this time I'm tapping it out. And I need to go over to the other side at the bottom of my apple. And it doesn't have to be the same shade of green over here, because apples, you know, have different colors on different sides. They might be no green at all on one of the sides. But I want a little bit of green in here. And it's blending nicely because this time I tapped out the excess water. Much happier with that. And I went back and again touched up on that one that was, that side that was too dark to please me. Beginning to look like an apple, isn't it? Got a long way to go because my colors may need to be intensified as it dries. And it may be partly that I've got too bright a light on my work and it makes it look less bright than it will when it actually gets dry. Okay, what shall we do next? Let's go to the edge of where the apple stem would be, the bottom of that kidney design. And let's use, let's go to our oranges for just a minute. Let's pick up, I think I'm going to use my smaller brush. Maybe that'll help me out. I'm going to get the smaller brush, put it in water so that I have it wet. Now I'm going to go with just the corner of my brush, not the whole bottom, the corner of the brush, dipping into the orange. That's very, very, very dark. Way darker, I think, than I wanted. So again, I'm going to have to go into the water tub and weaken that down with some water. And I can test that on my paper towel and say, yeah, that might work. So with that in my brush, I'm going to tap out a little bit more of that water so I don't have a bleed. I'm going to paint that top line of the kidney shape. And while I still have my brush loaded and hopefully just a little less paint in it, maybe I need to go dab and take a little more out. I'm going to go to the bottom of the kidney shape. Remember, we're not painting the kidney itself. And I'm going to outline that. And now using the whole bottom of my brush, yeah, I think that's how I'll do it. I'm just going to begin at that bottom line of the kidney and follow the curve of the apple and pull down so that I'm beginning to create an orange blush on the side of my apple. It's going to be greener down here toward the bottom, but it's going to have a nice orangey pink blush up. Continuing around, following the shape of the bottom of the kidney, leaving the kidney unpainted. My paper is getting way too dry, so I have to go back and get some water in my brush, but not very much. Tap out the excess and continue dragging that orange shape down around the shape of the apple. And I'm making mine kind of irregular, like that. That's kind of pleasing, isn't it? If that's not quite as rosy, if maybe you'd like a rosier clown look, clean your brush, clean water, with just the corner of the brush, because we want a minimal amount of paint, just a corner into the red. Again, because this is going to be an intense color, let's test it over here on our paint tray somewhere. Well, you have to get a little bit of paint in it. And that's pretty bright, so I would suggest that I want to get some clean water and just reduce the color, the intensity of the color just a little bit, so that it's more of a pinky color than a red. And I'm going to pick a spot just kind of in the, well, it's so light that it didn't show up for you. Now it's too dark, but I'll have to lighten it. I just started in the middle of one of those orange spots. Now I'm going to clean out my brush because I don't want to add any more paint. I just want just a damp brush. And I'm going to work those pinky colors out into the orange around it so that it's just a little bit more colorful. But I don't want any sharp edges. So I'm blending until all my colors begin to work together. And my apple is getting pretty dry, and when I can't blend the colors anymore, it means that I need to add a little bit more water. So I went back and got clean water, and I'm going to continue brushing back and forth on that pinky color until it's more nearly blended in. There we go. There we go. That's working. Now they don't have to have their colors in any particular pattern. This one doesn't have enough color to tell. See how the yellow and green go up into the red and the red comes down into. So any old way that you want to blend those color changes together is going to work, because the apples are that very different looking, each one from the other. Okay, we need to build that little shadow area where the stem comes out, because it does, I should have shown you while I had it here, it does appear somewhat darker because it's further away from you. It's not getting as much light in there. Let's begin with a little brush, corner of the brush, brown color, and we probably better test the shade because we don't want it excessively brown. Mine seems to be doable just the way it is, so I'm not adding any water this time. I've got paint basically on the whole bottom sharp edge of my littler brush, and I'm going to go into the line. Here's our kidney shape still. We're not painting it at all, not ever. We're going to the line above, that first orange line we put in. We're going to, with the brown, begin to put some strokey lines in, going up toward, and again following the shape of the apple. Mine is really too dry. I have to add a little bit of water. Now I'm getting what I wanted. I'm picking up some of the orange from before and adding the brown on top of it, and then moving it up to make the circle to house the stem of the apple. And we can't add the stem of the apple for a little bit because remember we can't put wet on wet unless we want them to bleed together. And we don't want the stem to be a part of the apple surrounding it. So we'll have to let this dry a little bit until we can come back and work on that section again. I didn't get enough brown on mine in looking at it more closely. So I'm going back, picking up some more brown, a little darker, and going back to that same area and making it darker. It's still damp, but that's okay because I wanted these colors to blend together. That's better, but I need to go in, let it dry just a tiny bit, and go back in and darken one of those areas. They're still not showing the depth of that stem area enough. So I cleaned my brush. I'm going back to the brown, and I'm getting lots of brown paint and not very much water this time because I want intensity of color. And I'm going to just kind of outline that first pencil mark at the top of the kidney bean. That's a little too intense, so I will feather brush it using just the tip of my little brush. And just kind of feather brush it up following the shape of the apple. And kind of curve it up like that. Aha! Liking that better. Now I can't see the shiny enough to suit me. And the way I'm going to do that is by darkening the bottom part, that orangey pinky area. I'm going to darken very near the edge of the kidney so that the white part stands out a little better. So this time I need to get all that brown out of my brush, cleaning, tapping. See how I'm using my brush back and forth on the paper towel? Much kinder, makes the brushes last a lot longer if we treat them nicely like that. Okay. I'm going to the bottom of the kidney shape, I should say. And actually what I'm finding that works for me, and sometimes you just have to try it until it looks right. This time, I feel like I need to use just a little bit, a tiny bit maybe, of brown to start my kidney shape. Let's see how that's going to do. Oops, I've got a red light, green light thing. Now, by that I mean when I get a sudden, right here at the bottom of the kidney shape, when I get a sudden color change too abrupt between colors, I need to go back with a clean brush and work back and forth between the two until I get those blended better. There we go. That's a little better. That can work. Now, we can't put in the stem yet. We were waiting for that area to dry up, but we can. Let's go back and change to our big brush now, because we don't want our apple flying around in outer space somewhere. We want it anchored to the surface it's resting on. Mine's resting on a counter. Yours is on the table, or who knows. But we need to have it anchored down to something so it's not lost in space. How do we do that? Well, we're going to begin at near the middle at the bottom of the apple, which is going to be presumably the spot furthest away from the light source. So this is going to be the darkest part. We're going to start our dark underlay color, which in this case is going to be brown, and we're going to work from the center point out to the edges. in light strokes like so. And of course our paint will be lighter in color as we get further away from the apple, as the shadow would also be. When you need more paint, go back and load your brush using the brown. Come back to the center point where we began. Go the other way and repeat the operation going out that way. For this process, probably the widest part, using the whole brush, is going to get the job done for you more quickly. So load up your big brush with nice brown paint. We don't want a lot of water at this point, just kind of dampish. Start at the middle point of the apple, stroke out. Back to the middle point of the apple, stroke out. We've got a beginning for it. Now let's make it look like a shadow instead of streaky lines. I think I need more water in my brush so that it works more easily. Medium amount of paint, a little bit more water than paint. I'm going to test it so it doesn't drip. When I tested it, I tapped a little bit of the moisture out of the brush so it doesn't drip on my paper. Back to the middle point, stroke out, back, stroke out. Going both directions, I'm going back and forth, and it's getting lighter as I get further away from the apple. It's still kind of perched up there in space. So with the lighter color of brown in my bigger brush, I'm going to extend my apple's sitting on the counter, so I'm going to extend my counter up so that poor apple's not sitting right on the edge ready to fall off. Sort of like so. And if it's not dark enough under here for the amount of shadow there really should be, go back in with more of your brown, or even touch on the purple lightly if you need to get this dark enough. We're almost done. Let me show you a couple of samples of others that I have done that have done everything that we've done. We just haven't done the stem yet, and we're going to do that in just a minute. But see how that shadow is darker under the apple and lighter as you move away, and is roughly the shape of the apple, not perfect. That's the only one I have apparently that has shadow on it. Oh no, here's the one that I worked on yesterday. And I got kind of silly with the purple, so I'm not at all happy with that one. I would have to work on it. It's fixable. I could go back and do more on it. I can add more brown to the purple and diffuse that a little bit, because that's just kind of wild and crazy. I've got very strong contrast between the purple shading, what's supposed to be shading, on the sides, and the yellow next to it. That needs to be wet again with my brush and just worked in and blended more and more. Okay, I think probably our apple that we've just worked on is now dry enough that we can go back and add the stem. Okay, doesn't really matter which brush we use, whichever one you like. Clean, 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 tap, 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 minimal water, straight edge only, not the big fat broad part of the brush. Flat edge only. We're going into the brown, and we want a nice load of paint on our brush, but we don't want it drippy. So I'm going to test it on my paper towel. Oh good, I've got almost a pencil line. Let me see if I can pull this up and show you. See a fine, almost a pencil line? That's what we want, because we're going to start here in that crater that we built for the apple stem. And we're going to stroke up and around. Oh, I got mine way too fat. That's what can happen. I pushed down too hard on my brush and got it way too fat. I could fix that, but it would take... I'd have to let it dry. Then I'd have to go in with a clean brush. Then I'd have to go in and wet it and lift off the too much paint that I didn't like. I don't want to do that. I am going to let it dry a bit so I can work with it again. And then I'm just going to add a leaf up there at the top of the stem and hide my mistake. The leaf can be, well, how are apple leaves shaped? They're not exactly a heart shape, but that's probably about the easiest, quickest way to fix it. So I'm going to, same brush, I didn't even go into water or paint. It should be still okay to use. I'm going to do a heart-shaped stroke like that. And starting at the bottom next to the stem, I'm going to go up with another heart-shaped line in the opposite direction. And then keeping my strokes all following the growth pattern of the leaf, I'm going to color in the middle. That's doable. Sticking up there a little bit too high in the air, I think. To balance out my painting, I almost have to have another leaf on mine. So I went down a little further on the stem and painted in another leaf just because it was off center and off balance. That would have to thoroughly dry before I do any final steps, any more touching up. But because it's just flat brown and not very interesting on the leaf, I think I probably would go in when it's dry using just probably the little brush, the pencil edge of it in maybe even black, and put a pencil line up through the middle of each leaf like the vein of the leaf would go. What do you think? Not too shabby, huh? If you want to do more, be sure that if you want the paints to blend together, that your work is slightly damp. If you want them to stay stationary without blending like our stem should have been, then that needs to be dry with a very, very minimal dampness in your brush and the bottom surface dry. I still think we did an okay job for our first apple. I think it's time to sign our work, put it away in our portfolio, clean up our workspace, and get ready for next time when we will do Oh Yes You Can for a third time. Come see me. Bye.